The movie starts in London, in the year 2099. A man sits on a bench. A young girl walks up to him. He asks her what mess she's gotten into now. The girl, Alita, replies that he got her into that mess. They talk about how she once saved him. Alita claims she is, even now, saving a world, just not this one. She says goodbye to the man she calls Wolf. She blinks and the young girl's face grows blank. A short scene shows us a table holding a white model of a house, its surrounding area and the people in it. We shift to Blue Ridge Mountains in the USA in the year 2032. Flynn Fisher does chores around the house. She gives her mother, a woman who has recently lost her eyesight, a cup of coffee and some medicines. When she sees that some pills are missing, she goes to the trailer outside their house and asks her brother, Burton, about them. He is playing a game with a VR headset on. He tells her he has something big coming tonight that will give them enough money for more medicines. He hands her his headset, so she can win the level for him. Flynn enters the game, taking on her brother's persona. She easily wins the game, finding a map that the others hadn't been able to find all this while. She tells Burton to wire the money to her. Later, she cycles through town and withdraws cash from an ATM. There, she meets Tommy, the town sheriff. They discuss his upcoming wedding and he tells her he's asked for wedding decorations to be made at the print shop where she works. At the print shop, Flynn's colleague Billy teases her about still having a crush on Tommy. Two boys at the shop show her the decorations Tommy asked for. When they realize there is an extra figurine of the groom, one of the boys breaks it. Flynn later finds the broken figurine and keeps it. The boys then give her a box that came for Burton. It has a metal contraption in it and was paid for by a Colombian company called Milagros Calderon. At home, Burton reveals that he was asked to beta test this sim since he crossed level 100 on another game. Except, it wasn't him but Flynn who had done that. Since they've been offered a lot of money for the gig, Flynn agrees to test it. Burton puts it on for her and she counts back from 10. When she opens her eyes she's in the sim, in Burton's body, riding a motorbike. She's in an iridescent city with large statues looming over it. A voice in her head welcomes her to the sim. When she says she can feel everything, the voice tells her she will also be able to feel pain. She has to do whatever the voice says in order to earn her keep. The voice guides her to an extravagant cocktail party in Buckingham Palace, hosted by an organization known as the RI or Research Institute. It leads her to a woman named Mariel and tells her to convince her to take him home. Flynn, in Burton's body, manages to do so. In the car, the voice tells her to take the glass ampule from her pocket and open it under Mariel's nose. Flynn does so and is attacked by the driver, a robot, but overpowers it. The voice in her head muses about the power it has in simply planting words in Flynn's head, like seeds. Flynn drives the car to a dead end. When she says the words "I've arrived," the wall in front of her opens and she drives inside to find a woman standing there. She is the woman whose voice has been in Flynn's head. She tells Flynn they will resume tomorrow. Flynn gets out of the sim and raves about how real it feels. She feels a bit dizzy on standing up but then decides to go get her mom's medicines. At a bar, she pointedly looks at a group of 4 men and 2 of them meet her outside. She gives them the money for 1 pill but the men claim it isn't enough. They try hassling her for more services when a disabled man, Connor, comes out from the bar. He attaches his mono wheel to a larger automobile and threatens the men into giving Flynn the medicine. He and Flynn head home. The other men return to the bar to see an old man in a suit waiting for them. He gives them a dressing down for being bullied by Connor. At home, Flynn sees her brother hunched over in pain in his trailer. He has marks engraved into his skin across his arms and back that are softly glowing and seem to be the cause of the pain. In the morning, Flynn washes her mother's hair. Her mother reveals that Burton has been giving her his pills to help her deal with the pain. Later, in Burton's trailer, Flynn apologizes for accusing him of stealing the pills. She then logs onto the sim, excited, but finds herself in a surgery room, unable to move. The woman from earlier is there and she tells her that Flynn can't leave the sim without her permission. The surgeons begin the process of removing Flynn's eyeball and replacing it with the one they took from Mariel. The woman tells Flynn to rein in her heart and control her mind to deal with the pain. Flynn does so and the woman lets her sleep. The next time she opens her eyes she finds herself in a car, sitting across the woman. The woman takes her to a building and uses her new eye to get access inside. They reach a chamber with an inverted pyramid hanging from the ceiling. The woman talks about giving Flynn a gift and tells her to put her own eye, not Marion's, to the lens. Flynn does so and jerks away from the pain of a laser shooting right into her eye, but the woman pushes her head forward. Suddenly, a man appears and the woman tells her to take care of him since he is there to kill them both. Flynn tries but the man ties her hands behind her back. He uses a gun that shoots sonic punches to attack the woman and make her reveal her intentions. Flynn gets her hand out and in the process sees the skin peel off to reveal a robot arm underneath. She helps the woman, who runs away, but the man then turns the gun on Flynn. In her own reality, Flynn wakes up and vows to never log on to that sim again. The next day Billy tries to cheer Flynn up. Flynn admits to having a crush on Tommy. She then talks about the sim and theorizes that it's actually a real place where she inhabits a robot body. While at the print shop, Flynn gets a phone call from Wolf, who tries warning her about some impending danger, but she cuts the call. Elsewhere, a policeman notices two suspicious cars and follows them, but they disappear. When he stops his own, a man pulls a gun on him from behind and tells him to stand in the middle of the road. An invisible force knocks the policeman down. It turns out to be one of the cars cloaked in invisibility. Flynn is closing the print shop when the lights flicker and Wolf's voice is heard through all the machines around her. He claims her life is in danger and there is a bounty of $9 million on her head. Burton and his other ex-military friends are sitting around a fire when Flynn arrives and tells him what happened. They initially think it's a joke, but when they use a drone to check, they see a group of suspicious people coming towards them. We see Charisse Newland, previously described as the Queen Bee of the Research Institute, talking with the man who attacked Flynn and the woman with her, Aelita West. Charisse tells him the breach is too dangerous. The man reassures her that a hit is out on Flynn and those connected to her. Back in 2032, Burton tells Flynn to get her mother into the basement. His friend, Reese, tracks the oncoming assassin's drone to make it look like the boys are still sitting around the fire. They get linked and the marks on their arms glow as they gain the ability to see the drone's visual feed. Burton and his friends get their guns and begin to take the men down. Meanwhile, Flynn hides in her house. When one of the men enters and tries to get her, Burton takes him down with a shot. Just when they are running low on ammo, Connor arrives and helps them out. Wilf is dreaming. He thinks of a memory, a time when he approached Aelita on behalf of his employer. He tells her his employer wants information on the Research Institute, the place she is currently working at. Aelita is skeptical. Wolf asks her if she is truly happy. Wolf, whose real name is Wolf Netherton, wakes up to a phone call from Lev Zubov, his employer. He tells Wolf to come over immediately. He says he has built a peripheral for Flynn, as she is their best hope of finding Aelita. After the phone call, Lev's companion Ash tells him that she doesn't think Wilf can be trusted with this assignment. Lev tells Ash that Wilf has a strong motivation and an immense capacity for violence. Flynn logs back in and wakes up in a body made for her in 2099. Wilf arrives and introduces himself. He shows Flynn that this isn't a sim but the future. Quantum tunneling makes it possible for her to be in this body. He takes her to Trafalgar Square where she takes in the buildings and the giant statues around the city. He proves it is the future by showing her a newspaper with her mother's obituary, 4 weeks from that day in Flynn's timeline. He tells her they have already provided a medicinal drug for the mother's glioma to the pharmacy in Flynn's town and paid for it, so Flynn can save her mother and in turn, help Wolf find Aelita. Back home, Flynn gets the medicine from the pharmacy. Her mother admits to knowing about the glioma and says she wanted to spare Flynn the sadness. She agrees to take the drug even though Flynn says it's experimental. Meanwhile, Tommy sees a cup of coffee seemingly floating in midair. He pokes around and eventually realizes there is a car with some sort of cloaking device. While Burton's friends bury the bodies of the attackers, Flynn fills him in and tells him about the medicine for their mother. He is furious and says they can't trust Wilf. They argue. Burton wants to log in instead of her but Flynn is against it. The next time, Flynn wakes up in a house in Notting Hill. Wilf introduces her to Lev, who hired him, and Ash and Ashen, who maintain the connection between the two worlds. She finds out that her body has an 8-hour sleep cycle and is controlled by AI the rest of the time. They explain that when they come in contact with the past branches off to create a parallel timeline which is known as a stub. The contact becomes the point of separation. Aelita worked for the Research Institute and was providing them with a trapdoor into it. She asks what happened to her and her family in their timeline but they don't tell her. She then finds out that the drug given to her mother only has a 57% rate of success. She tells them that once they help her and her family out, she'll start talking about their missing lady. Tommy finds a bullet in the car and goes up to meet Burton and asks him about it. Burton identifies the type of bullet but claims to know nothing else. When Tommy questions his friend's trucks around the house, Burton says they had a drone fight. In London, Lev tells Wilf to have some patience with Flynn. When Wilf asks Lev why he wants access to Flynn's world, Lev remains cryptic. Flynn tells Burton the people from the future are going to help them out and are starting off by giving them $250,000 they get in the form of a lottery won by their cousin. At the bar, Flynn tells Burton he should enlist Connor to help them out too. Burton is hesitant since Connor is usually drunk. Burton brings up the game Flynn played for him at the beginning of episode 1. He says Flynn let the sheep out of the fight zone and was rewarded with a tractor for her empathy. He calls it an empathy bonus and reminds her that there is no reward of a tractor in real life. Flynn retorts that even if there was one, he wouldn't have found it. Burton gives in and goes to meet Connor. Connor tells him one of the attackers had seen Connor but lets him go out of pity. That made Connor want to kill them. They talk about the rush of being in a fight again. Burton then tells him what's going on and asks him to join and help, but he insists that Connor be sober. Corbell Pickett is trying to enjoy the company of a beautiful woman in a sim when a British man interrupts. He is the same man who attacked Flynn and Aelita. He offers Corbell $10 million to get rid of Flynn and Burton. Corbell thinks it's a joke and leaves the game. Flynn tries to search the internet for references to Milladros Calderon or Wilf Netherton but comes up empty. While doing so, her hand gets stuck on the computer mouse and she is unable to move it. Ultimately, she uses her other hand to pry it off and get it back to normal. Corbell is in bed with a woman when he gets a message saying that he has received $2.5 million in his bank account. Flynn wakes up in the middle of the night after hearing noises from downstairs. She calls Burton for help but finds that it is only her mother. She is in the kitchen looking for food. She tells Flynn that she was hungry and then reveals that she can see her. Her eyesight is coming back. We then see a flashback to Clanton, 2015. A biker gang shows up at Corbell Pickett's garage to buy some cars. When they get in the cars to test drive them, Corbell locks them in from the outside, meaning for them to die in the scorching heat. A number of giant wooden crosses and a bucket of nails are nearby. His son, a young Jasper, watches. Back in Flynn's present, an older Corbell Pickett considers what to do about the call to assassinate the Fishers. His wife suggests he use Jasper, Billy Ann's husband, to find out more about what the Fishers have gotten into. Flynn sees her mother reading a newspaper and smiles. She meets Billy Ann and tells her everything, while Burton and his friends' drones hover around them. In the print shop, Burton is using printers to make more guns. He reveals to Flynn that he bought the place with the money they received. Flynn is surprised and further annoyed when she realizes he rented a car. She tells him they need to be a team and make decisions together. Connor arrives, ready to help them out. On the way home, the siblings discuss how much information to give the others. Burton is furious when he realizes Flynn told Billy Ann everything. Flynn says she is her only friend but Burton counteracts that Jasper's uncle is Corbell Pickett. In future London, Lev and Wilf discuss Wilf's past, referring to an event when Wilf was responsible for taking some lives. Lev says there is no shame in it and he should embrace it. They wake up Flynn's Perpheral, who is kept in a box while not in use. Flynn logs into the Perpheral and tells them everything that happened with Aelita. They reveal Mariel Raphael was an assistant security manager at the RI. In return, they tell her about Corbell Pickett being recruited to harm them. Wilf sits in a car looking at a house. We get a flashback of the time when he and Aelita were adopted by their parents. They wanted Aelita but she refused to go without Wilf, who was then known as Wolfgang. Once he agrees to change his name to Wilfred, the couple decides to adopt him too. He enters the house and hears Aelita singing but it's only a robot with her face and voice. He meets his adoptive mother who tells him she last saw Aelita a month ago in St. James. In her usual cryptic manner, Aelita said she was staying where snow last fell in London. As Wilf and his mother talk, it's clear that there is some animosity between them. Flynn and Burton argue about the situation with Corbell. Burton wants to kill him but Flynn insists on finding another way. She logs in again, this time in a car with Wilf. They drive around Buckingham Palace, trying to retrace Flynn's steps from that night. They decide to walk around and Wilf links them up so they have access to each other's sensory experience. Flynn can see and hear everything Wilf can, while also feeling his hangover. Meanwhile, Burton meets Corbell and reveals he knows about the hit. He offers Corbell two choices, one of which is $200,000 every week to leave them alone. When asked about the other, Burton talks about the haptics used in the Marine Corps to connect him and his friends. He describes their group as becoming one big organism and how he once almost killed a guy because of the memories of one of the sergeants in his group. Should Corbell lay a finger on them, he should be afraid of all the men Burton served with. Corbell talks about how he got rid of the filth in this town and made it a safe space. He reiterates that this is his town. Burton points at the glass in Corbell's hand and a bullet immediately shatters it. He makes his first offer again. As the two men shake hands, Tommy watches. Charisse Newland tells her hitman Daniel that he's taking too long to get rid of Flynn. She threatens him to be more efficient. He tells her that Aelita went to school with one of the Re's other employees, Grace Hogarth. Charisse says she will handle it. As Wilf and Flynn walk, she asks him why Aelita called her a polt. He says it's short for poltergeist, which is the term they use for people from a different time who use peripherals. A police robot begins following Flynn and Wilf realizes that the peripheral isn't properly registered. When confronted by the police robot, Wilf makes up a story about the peripheral being used by a woman from Canada. He then makes up an impromptu love confession to avoid the question of the woman's visa. Flynn asks if she can go home and is logged out of the Peary. Charisse Newland visits Grace Hogarth in a garden with beehives nearby. The two women have tea and Charisse tells Grace that her data research on the stub is important work. She then asks about Aelita. Grace admits she introduced Aelita to the stub research department. As bees begin to converge on the glass enclosure, Charisse reveals there was a chemical in the tea that makes her sweat mimic a pheromone released by hornets. Ignoring Grace's pleas, she opens the door and the bees attack Grace. Jasper drops Billy Ann at home and tells her he needs to drop off a bag at his uncle's, given by Burton Fisher. She opens it to see numerous bundles of cash and tells him to find out what it's all about. At his father's warehouse, Jasper gives Corbell the bag. Corbell entices him into taking one of the cash bundles and then demands a service in return. He wants Jasper to find out where Burton is getting all this money from. Flynn talks to Burton about the feeling of being linked up with someone. He describes that it can often feel like love, but it isn't. This feeling of getting lost in someone else's senses is known as a haptic drift. When Flynn next logs in, Wilf tells her about Aelita's clue. She suggests that Snow could be a person. Wilf figures out that it was one of Aelita's inspirational heroes and they find the place she was staying. In Aelita's apartment, everything is a mess as if ransacked by someone. They find a non-working grandfather clock that looks exactly like the broken one at Flynn's house. Wilf asks what time her clock is stuck on. When they shift the clock's hands to that time, a secret door opens. They find the surgery room where Flynn had her eye replaced. There are also 2 broken down peripherals. Flynn also finds the white model of her own house and its surrounding area. They are about to leave when the main door blasts open. Daniel and a robot attack them, Daniel using his sonic gun which seems to have an effect on Flynn's real body too. They manage to overpower both of them. Daniel reveals that Charisse is after Flynn because she took something. Before he can say anything more, Charisse remotely controls the robot and kills Daniel. Thanks for watching. You can check out the rest of the episodes on any streaming service. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, so you can watch more movies like this. Thanks for watching.